Morning, everybody. My name's Dave Archbold. I'm one of the managed services specialists here at Risual. Joining me on today's call, we've got Alex, who's one of the practice leads for business productivity. Just before we start today's webcast, a little bit of webcast guidance just to kick us off. For the purposes of the call, we've actually got everybody on mute during the body of the presentation, just to eliminate any background noise. We will be taking everybody off mute at the end, and we'd love anybody to ask any questions that they've got off the back of the presentation. If anybody's got any questions whilst we're going through it, please feel free to use the IM function of the link meeting, or if you're dialed in normally, please drop an email through to inquiries@risual.com. We're also recording today's session, so if anybody would like to send it on to any of the colleagues or review it again at a later date, we will send it out to everybody who's joining us on today's call. Now, hopefully everybody knows kind of who Risual are, but for those who perhaps haven't had that much dealings with us in the past, I'm going to do a very quick overview of Risual as an organisation. So Risual are a completely Microsoft-centric company. Hopefully you've all seen that we were headline partners at Future Decoded a couple of weeks ago. So as such, we really see ourselves as a trusted pair of hands for Microsoft. We really specialise in the consulting and managed services, and we help customers to kind of gain the maximum value from their investment in Microsoft technologies. In order for Risual to do this as an organisation, we've made a conscious effort to split ourselves into three distinct divisions. The first of which is our premium technical consultancy. So this is where Alex sits, and again, Risual as an organisation are quite unique in as much as we cover the whole Microsoft technology stack. To do this and still have specialists in each area, our technical consultancy is split into four distinct practices. The first of which is business productivity, and this is where our consultants will look after things like SharePoint and CRM. The next practice is our unified comms and messaging, and this is a game where our consultants will look after things like link and exchange. Now, when the consultants are working within these practices, that's what their focus is. You can rest assured that if you've got a link really do have focus on their individual particular areas. The next practice that we've got is systems management, which is where we help organisations look at things like desktop refreshes and problems like System Center will sit in there. And then we've got identity and access perimeter, which kind of ties everything together and is things like Active Directory Federation services or Forefront Identity Manager. Now, Risual as an organisation love to help customers work on all different parts of the Microsoft technology stack, and as we've got specialists in each area, it's sometimes necessary for us to try and tie everything all together whilst we're helping customers work on much bigger projects. To this end, we've got our business consultancy arm. Now, the business consultancy arm look after the kind of project management aspect. So if we're working with customers and they want a bit of SharePoint, a bit of link, a bit of exchange, that's where our project management team sit, and they can really help you get the best out of your projects. This is really where our engagement managers sit as well. So if you're unsure as to what value you can get out of your Microsoft technology stack, we can conduct things like a business value assurance to have a look at your complete estate and see where you can get the most benefit from your Microsoft technologies. Obviously, once customers have installed Microsoft technologies, we think it's really critical that the services are monitored and optimized, and you get the best support possible, and you've got a Microsoft specialist to then call upon if needs be, and that's kind of our managed services business. Now, when we're talking to customers, there's a couple of things that customers are always trying to achieve. The first is how can they improve costs? And the second is how can they improve outcomes? Now, at Risual, we truly believe that technology is an enabler within the workforce. So new technology can help cost efficiencies be realized. New technology can also help with customer service empowerment. It can create partnering for successful outcomes. It enables information access and transparency to be done, and it can also ensure that quality is maintained and monitored. Now, obviously, we know what our customers' end goals are going to be. And what we try and, or what we've created is three distinct propositions to take out to market. Again, we see IT being at the heart of positive change. And when we're looking at this, one of the things we want to look at is how do customers actually engage with their customers. So do their staff have the right information in the right place at the right time to be able to deliver the message that the business is looking for? To this end, we've got our connected business strategy. So once you know kind of how you're looking to engage with your customers, it's equally important to make sure that your staff are empowered to be able to follow through on your engagement strategy. And this is really about making sure that your staff have got the right devices to be able to work where they need to be able to get the right information at the right time, and really do it in a quick and timely fashion. And looking at this, we've got our end user computing strategy. So really making sure that your staff have got the right tools to be able to enable them to do their job properly. Now, if you've got an engagement strategy, so you know how you're going to connect to the business, and you've empowered your workforce, the final thing that we think is critically important is making sure that you've got the right back-end infrastructure to be able to support everything. So here we've got an optimized service vision strategy, and it looks at how you can make your infrastructure suitable for the messages that you're looking to deliver. So really, it's all about enhancing your infrastructure, be it on premises or on cloud. And what I'd like to do now is just very quickly pass over to Alex, who will be delivering the main body of this presentation today. Thank you very much.
Hi everyone. Thanks very much, David. Just quickly note that if anybody's having issues at the moment with sound or vision on as in seeing the presentation, then we do have Dewey from our support desk trying to help people out with that. So please bear with us on that one. What we'll do is we'll just continue with the webcast just now, and hopefully anybody's having issues, we'll get them resolved as we go along. So the webcast, SharePoint versus Yammer. I am Alex Egger. I'm the business productivity lead for our practice within Visual. In the business productivity practice, we deal with SharePoint, Yammer, business intelligence, and also CRM. A lot of what we do at the moment is around SharePoint and Yammer. I've been a SharePoint consultant for about 8 years now. I still get involved in all different aspects of the project lifecycle around SharePoint and Yammer. Still do a lot of design work, still do a lot of deployment, but also now do a lot of work around strategy, around governance, around adoption, and so on as well. So I've been involved in SharePoint since 2003, so I've kind of seen the whole social journey kind of evolve over that period of time, and that's kind of what we're going to cover off in the first part of this webcast. So just to quickly go through the agenda, I think we've done the introductions now. I'm the only one that's got to do one. We'll talk about what we see social actually being. What do we mean when we're talking about social? What are the drivers that we often see behind people deploying social functionality within the organization? Quickly look at some of the objections that we come across and whether we think we can mitigate those or challenge those objections. Not all of them we can. I'll go with that. Quickly look at some of the history around social from a SharePoint perspective. Then discuss the social capabilities of SharePoint 2013 natively, Yammer in its own right, and then look at the options for running those two different platforms in parallel to really optimize the solution that you're providing to the business. And then we'll drop into a demo to look at what we've really discussed in that that sort of integrated view of the SharePoint and Yammer world. Sorry, I might not have the next slide on. Sorry, I just wasn't sure if the slides were changing through there. If they're not evolving, then I'll pass back over to David.
Alex, do you want me to move the slides along for you?
Oh, sorry, I didn't realise I hadn't taken over as presenter. There we go. Apologies. So we see the agenda now. So one of the things I do want to mention is that absolutely we can run Yammer on its own, and we can run Sharepoint on its own, and have them as two separate systems. We're not really going to look at that as part of this, because the idea was to weigh up the social capabilities specifically around Sharepoint against Yammer, and then look at how we can integrate them. So that's going to kind of be the focus. Okay, so what is social then? So it's actually a very versatile business tool. We're seeing it used more and more in a lot of organizations. It's not for a bit of chit chat amongst people. It's actually a very, very, very powerful business tool. And there are obviously a lot of applications out there around social, not just Yammer and SharePoint, but these are the ones we're going to look at today. It provides a collaboration platform, so we can use these social capabilities to share information, share documents, work on documents. It actually offers another level of collaboration. So if you've already got SharePoint, the social layer can actually, already enhance the collaborative capabilities that you have. It can be used for communications, so it can just be used for sending out alerts, updates and so on, or you can actually start to use these social capabilities to change some of the more traditional communication tools that you use within the organization. So you may replace your intranet news with some of these social capabilities, allow people to contribute to threaded conversations, to like things and so on. You may stop relying on email quite as much with the social tools. Once you get using those, global emails can start to drop off, and people can instead start to fall back to threaded conversations through the social platforms. Social provides a very powerful knowledge tool within the organization as well. So what you'll probably find is there are not a lot of organizations out there who have a way for people to easily contribute snippets of information, little tidbits of information that they have, which can actually be very powerful and very useful. Not the sort of information you would find in a document captured in that way, but just some really useful stuff that they know because they've been doing their job for a long time, for example. Now, what the social platform can do within SharePoint and Yammer is actually provide a very easy way for people to contribute that information. That information is then available to a wide audience, and it's also searchable. So it's a very easy way to implement a knowledge management platform within the organization. And the last thing I've got in there is communities. So it kind of falls alongside the collaboration, but if we need some way for the communities within our organization and outside our organization as well to come together and share ideas, share information, share content, then again the social capabilities of SharePoint and Yammer provide an excellent platform to do that. So the point there being that when we talk about social, we're not just talking about sharing irrelevant information with the rest of the business about what I had for tea last night. We're talking about a very powerful business tool. So some of the drivers we see behind the implementation of social, well, all the good reasons I just mentioned beforehand, obviously. Some of the others are just because it's there. So if you have deployed SharePoint 2013, if you have purchased, for example, an E3 licensing agreement with Office 365, you'll have social in SharePoint, you'll have social in Yammer. A lot of people have paid for it, so they want to use it, and that can often be the initial driver for deploying the functionality within the business, and then all the other benefits obviously start to be realized as well. Deploying it because there is no current knowledge management solution or good way of sharing information other than global emails within the business, often another good driver. An intranet refresh, so when people are coming to redesign, rebuild their intranet in a SharePoint environment, which is often an initial project for a SharePoint deployment, then the discussions around social tend to come up then as well, because like I mentioned previously, you might want to look at using the social capabilities to improve or replace some of the more traditional news functionality you would find in an intranet. SharePoint adoption. So when we're deploying SharePoint for something, which undeniably can be quite, I guess, stale, like a document records management solution within a business. If we can add a social layer on top of that, there is a very good chance that that's going to help drive adoption. It's going to get people more interested. It's going to be some of the bells and whistles on top. But actually, by applying that social layer on top, not only does it make it more interesting for the users, but it gives you a whole new tool set about sharing those documents that we're now going to put in SharePoint, about collaborating on those documents we've now put in SharePoint. So it can be a really powerful adoption tool as well. Connecting communities. So again, I mentioned this on the previous slide, is that any businesses can have a lot of communities that need to communicate. Often this is just by email. And if we can put some sort of social capability in, then we can really start to connect those communities that exist within the organization and let them start to share knowledge, innovation, and experiences and ideas. The last one in there is working with partners. If we have Yammer, we can set up external networks and we can link in with other companies who are using Yammer, and it becomes a much broader reaching social and collaboration tool. Or it may be that we have an extranet site in our SharePoint environment, if we're just using SharePoint Social, and we can have those threaded conversations using SharePoint Social within a more traditional SharePoint environment. These are some of the key drivers we see behind people delivering social. Some of the less common ones are just because it's a real buzz thing at the moment, social, and people get interested about it, and they like to be involved in the new technologies, so they're very keen to deploy social. That's not to say it's a fad. It's just to say that people, there's a lot of awareness around social. It's quite a buzzword at the moment. So, some of the more common objections that we see when we're talking to people about whether or not to deploy social capabilities. First one is that there is a concern sometimes that there'll be no control over it. The concept of having a organization-wide capability to publish conversations, people to reply to those conversations, post documents, images, etc., can make people very nervous. To be honest with you, the capabilities often already exist in terms of email, in the form of global emails, and that doesn't necessarily happen now. So, why should it necessarily happen in the social world? People are accountable for what they put on. Their names are stamped on the posts and the responses they make. So, it's not an anonymous environment. The other one is that people think it's like Facebook, it's like LinkedIn. I think what I referred to before, they think people would just spend their time sharing jokes, talking about what they had on TV, what they watched on TV last night, that sort of thing. It's a fair point. To be honest with you, I've never seen that in all the social deployments that we've done. People do see it as a business tool, and there are many other ways for them to share frivolous information amongst themselves within the office, so it doesn't tend to get used for that. Absolutely, you can deliver some social capabilities specifically around that. So if you've got an intranet, you might want to have a social feed in there. You might want people to share recipes, sell things, and so on, and use the social tools for that. But it's very much communicated that that is where that happens in that particular area. There is a concern as well sometimes that more mature employees, people who are not used to some of these newer technologies, or those that perhaps aren't as savvy with IT, just won't get it. And again, that actually isn't something that we see. We see quite the opposite. When people understand what social is, that it is another business tool, that it's something else they can use instead of email, and the other benefits that go with it, we see the adoption of social across the whole spectrum of staff. It really isn't just something that the young or tech-savvy people will use. Everybody kind of gets it once they understand what it is, and people generally get quite excited about it across the board. The other one is a concern around security. Now, this is probably more so for Yammer, because there is a perception that anything you do on Yammer could potentially be available to the outside world. And that's not the case. You need to have an external network set up for that. And if you do set up an external network, which you'd have to do through your administration, then there are still controls around that and administration, and you would have governance in place as well. And really, that's what it comes down to. When people are concerned around the fact that they'll have lack of control, that it's going to be a risk, these sorts of areas, as long as it's treated as a proper project and not just dropped in, as long as there's proper planning, there's proper governance put in place, and the available admin tools are used correctly, then actually these risks are no more prevalent than any other of the systems which you've got in terms of communication within the business. And the last one I put on there is that social's just the latest fad, so why would we bother putting it in? It'll be gone again in a year's time. I really don't think that's the case. I think people being able to collaborate and share information and ideas in an agile way, using tools like social, is definitely the way things are going to go, certainly from a Microsoft perspective. So I think it's something that people should be on board with now, because I think it's going to be a really powerful and long-term solution. So in terms of SharePoint, Microsoft has kind of been having a go at this for quite a long time now. And depending on which way you look at it, you can argue that they've had some social capabilities right back since 2003, when that was released 11 years ago. So in 2003, SharePoint 2003, SharePoint portal server, we had personal sites and a user profile. So already you were able to actually publicize information about yourself to the rest of the business, and also store and share documents with people within the business. So again, you could argue that, that's what I mean. You could argue that's an early starting point for social capabilities. In 2007, they introduced this concept of colleagues. It might have been in 2003. It might have been in 2003 as well, actually. I'm not sure. But in 2007, we had definitely colleagues, so you could start to connect with other people. You could have a link to other people who you worked with or who you were associated with in the organisation. So we're starting to build up some networks here. And the same with the in common. So SharePoint would start to tell you people who have things in common with you. So you could start to have information pushed towards you. So people suggested to you who you should probably be speaking to or be aware of. In 2010, they brought in the Newsfeed. It's not really a newsfeed in the sense that we know it now from things like LinkedIn, Facebook, and from SharePoint 2013 and Yammer. The newsfeed in 2010 was more to show activity around people tagging documents and making notes. It wasn't really around conversations. But this was kind of Microsoft's first attempt to really do some social, and it wasn't brilliant, to be honest with you. That's my opinion anyway. And the notes and tags in 2010, people could add comments to items, pieces of content in SharePoint. They could tag them with metadata, and then that information could then, if you tagged it, a piece of content, could be flagged to other people who were interested in that tag. So really, it was kind of the forerunner. SharePoint 2010 really laid the foundation for the proper social capabilities, which we now see in SharePoint 2013. Got some screen grabs here, just to show what some of these things look like. So the first one is SharePoint 2003. Gone back a bit there, but you can see that in there you were able to show you you had a public view of your personal site where you could actually people could view your profile information. 2007. Here we're starting to see people that, who you work with. You can see this just on the sort of the right-hand column there. These are the people who've got things in common with you. These are your colleagues. So you can see sites where you're both members of, etc., etc. So start to build those networks. 2010. This is the sort of the newsfeed idea. So here we can actually see the content that this person's been creating, and we can see the tags and notes that this person has chosen to apply to content, and the notes that the tags that they're following. I find it quite clunky, this interface. It never seemed very intuitive in terms of what they're trying to achieve with the social side of things. So SharePoint 2013 social, and we will look at this in the demo. This introduced some of the real core concepts of social that people are already familiar with from using things like Twitter, LinkedIn, and the more less business side of things like Facebook. So we ended up with site feeds. So any site you created in SharePoint, I don't know, I'm using the past tense, it's still there. So any site you create in SharePoint 2013, you can put a site feed on there. So you can have that threaded conversation, that microblogging functionality where you can like a conversation that, or a post that somebody puts up, you can reply to it, you can add tags to it. So that's what I mean by hashtags. So if I want to post a piece of information in SharePoint 2013 on a site feed, if I use a hashtag, I'm basically categorizing that, and anybody else who's chosen to follow that hashtag or that category will automatically be told there's been a new post about that. So suddenly the information you start to input into the system can reach a much broader audience. You don't have to choose who to send that to. People have already chosen they want to see that information, and they will automatically receive it. That's really one of the powerful things, and that's going to be the same in Yammer as well. We have an activity feed in SharePoint 2013. So if somebody comes to my personal site or my profile in SharePoint 2013, they can see all of the things I've been contributing to in terms of these site feeds, any documents that I've been adding to sites, any profile updates I've made to my SharePoint profile. We have a newsfeed. So the newsfeed is your personal view of the SharePoint world. So it's what you've chosen to be told about in the SharePoint world. That's accessed via your My Site homepage. So when I go to my newsfeed, I will see all of those hashtags that I've chosen to follow. I'll see any information that's been put in SharePoint where people have tagged that information with the hashtag. So it's all the things I've chosen to subscribe to. Any people I'm following in SharePoint, I'll be told when they change their profiles or when they add content, and any documents that I choose to follow in SharePoint, I'll be told about any updates to those as well. And this is kind of one of the real benefits or the benefit to SharePoint Social when you get to conversations around Yammer versus SharePoint. This is still one of the things that SharePoint really kind of has over and above Yammer. One of the few things it still has over and above Yammer is that if you use just pure SharePoint Social, it's linked into the content in SharePoint. So if somebody updates a document in SharePoint, I get told about it if I'm choosing to follow that. So that's one thing. I'll come on to that later on. Just now, the last thing in here is the ability to use mentions as well. So in a similar way to people who have seen in Twitter or other platforms, I can reference other people from any posts I put in SharePoint around social, and then that person will automatically be added to that post. I can click through to their profile from that post, but I can also, if I have been referenced or mentioned somewhere, I get told about it as well. So if somebody happens to say that, puts a post up saying that I might be a good person to speak about this, I know that I've been mentioned somewhere and that people might be contacting me. So a lot of these capabilities are really an aggregation of functionality that could be seen across other social platforms, and Microsoft have really taken the best and brought them together. There's a lot of crossover with Yammer, although some of the terminology is different. So in the Yammer world, if we're looking at Yammer as a platform on its own, we have the concept of networks. So every organization will have an internal network, and that is where you can connect with people who work within your business. But you can also create external networks which allow you to connect with people outside of the business. And with Yammer being a cloud-based platform, and only a cloud-based platform, that is something which you can set up very quickly and very easily. You would still want to have good governance around that and only have a few people with administrative rights that could set external networks up and make sure that those external networks are only set up after due diligence has been performed and made sure that they are the right thing to do. But you don't have to do any additional infrastructure. You don't have to, put extra servers in your DMZ to take into account that you're opening your environment up to the rest of the outside world. Yammer is a cloud-based solution, so it's very easy to set up. It's already provisioned for external access if you choose to do that. We've got groups and group feeds in Yammer. So in the Yammer world, I can create any number of groups that I want, and within those groups, I then have a Yammer feed specific to that group. So in the SharePoint world, if you were to have a new feed, you would have to create a site and drop that feed into it. It's a bit leaner in Yammer. I just create a group, and that group only consists of a feed, so I'm not having to put all the bits and pieces around it that I don't necessarily need. A group just allows me to have a threaded conversation feed, which I can invite people into. I have a home feed in Yammer, so when I go to my Yammer homepage, I see a page with all the latest information that's been added to Yammer across the organization, and I can then filter that down to just show me the recent information, just show me the stuff that I'm interested in. Excuse me. We've got topics in Yammer. Topics are the same as hashtags in the SharePoint world. Mentions are the same, so I can talk about somebody else, I can reference somebody else, and they will know about that in one of my posts. I can praise people in Yammer, so I can there's specifically an option to praise somebody in the Yammer world, which means I can just make sure everybody else in the business or any particular audience within the business knows that I think somebody else has done a particularly good job. And the last thing here is announcements. So as an administrator of a group, I can post an announcement, and it will always sit at the top of the conversation feed, and it'll have a title and a body. It'll just look different, it'll be more prominent, and it's just a good way to put very key information into a group. Announcements of praise are specific to Yammer. You're not going to find anything like that in the SharePoint equivalent. In the Yammer world, I can choose to follow people, groups, and topics, and if I choose any people, any groups, or any topics, I will automatically be fed updates about those within my my followed tab within my home feed. So again, it's that self-subscription. I choose what I want to know about in this social world, and then anything that gets added, I automatically get updated about. Very, very, very powerful. Much less emphasis on people having to worry about targeting information at the right people. They just tag it correctly, they categorize it correctly, and the right people will automatically know. The other thing we can do in Yammer is use it for sharing files. So we can upload documents into the Yammer world and then collaborate around those via the feed, the conversation feed that we've created. If you are going to use SharePoint and Yammer together, we would probably argue that's not such a good idea, and you actually want to keep your documents in SharePoint and just link to them from your Yammer conversation, but that's something we can cover off when we look at the demonstration about how you would do that. I think the thing is that, you know, you can probably see from those two slides there's a lot of crossover. Terminology is different, there's some different functionality in both, but there is a lot of crossover in the functionality between these two tools. So if you're going to use them both, then you really aren't going to use all the functionality in both, otherwise it's going to get very, very confusing for people. So what you need to do is, if you want to use the best of Yammer and the best of SharePoint, you need to turn some things off in SharePoint, and you need to properly integrate Yammer into the solution. That's assuming you're not going to run them both as completely separate applications, which we're not really going to look into for now, but obviously you can do that. So recommendations would be, yes, if you can use Yammer, then let's take away the bits of SharePoint we don't want, and let's integrate Yammer into the SharePoint environment. And there are reasons for doing that, potentially reasons not for doing that, but we'll look at that in another slide. The steps we're going to have to look at if we are going to do that is we are going to have to take off some of the social features in SharePoint. So really, SharePoint Social, the aspects of SharePoint Social we want to keep are really just around content. So we want to take away the threaded conversations, the connecting with people, the talking with people that Yammer provides, and really just leave the ability to follow content. So what I can do is I can remove all the feeds from SharePoint, but still let people choose to follow a document or to follow a site. Now all that's going to do is give them a personalized favorites within their My Site of all the documents and all the sites they want to follow, which is still very, very useful, and there's a bit of functionality you probably don't want to use. So really the only aspect of SharePoint Social we want to keep is that following part of it. We then use Yammer for all of our conversations, all of our threaded conversations that we want to put in our sites. We can do that using what's called the Yammer embed code. Now, there was an app. There is an app. It's not gone anywhere. It's still there for Yammer, which you can download from the App Store in SharePoint and add to your sites. Now, that app The recommendation now is not to use that. It is probably easier to use. All that app does is package up some of this embed code and save you having to drop the code onto the page. The problem is Microsoft now said don't use the app because we are going to keep changing the underlying code of Yammer, and that will break the app if you're already using that. So the recommendation now is to not use the prepackaged app that comes via the SharePoint App Store and actually just drop a short snippet of code onto the pages in SharePoint instead. You can then easily update that if you need to, if Microsoft changed the underlying Yammer code. We can take our SharePoint Newsfeed. The Newsfeed, if you remember, is the part where in SharePoint where I get updates about anything I've chosen to follow in the SharePoint world. Well, we can get rid of that and replace that with our content in there anymore because that's something unique to SharePoint. But I will get a view of all the Yammer activity that I'm interested in directly from my SharePoint my site homepage. In my collaboration sites, so my departmental site, my project site, my community site that I've created, I can take away the default SharePoint site feed and drop in a Yammer feed, and that's going to look very similar to people, to be honest with you. So there's not a lot, no great shakes there in terms of having to retrain people or explain the differences. They will just get a feed, a threaded conversation area which they can use. Thing is, you're just bubbling up the Yammer group that you've created rather than dropping in or leaving the SharePoint feed in there. And then we've got well, there is I guess a decision around the on-premise and online, and I've got that in more detail when we do the demo, but this is going to be a bit of a decision point because, or a consideration point. If you use SharePoint 2013 on-premise, the level of integration you get with Yammer is less now, and will probably be less going forwards. It's not to say all the good stuff you get, all the good levels of integration you get in SharePoint Online or Office 365 won't come to SharePoint on-premise. It's just that there is a lag. All innovation and all new functionality goes into SharePoint Online and Yammer in terms of integration, and then bits of it drip through to the SharePoint on-premise with the release of service packs and so on. If you are using SharePoint Online or Office 365, it's a much clearer decision. It's a bit of a no-brainer. You just want to use you want to use Yammer, and there are some reasons in the next slide as to why we would look at that. There are a couple of reasons probably just worth pointing out. A couple that we've come across, or we do come across when talking to people about whether to remove SharePoint Social and replace it with Yammer. A couple of stumbling blocks that people just can't get around, and one is that some of our customers, particularly in the public sector or things like legal, they've got legislation and compliance which means they cannot put any content like this in the cloud. With Yammer only being a cloud-based solution, that actually rules them out from using Yammer altogether, and in that situation really they have only got the option to use SharePoint Social. So they would stick with all the functionality of the SharePoint Social and work with that. It's not going anywhere in the short term. Microsoft have said that the next release of SharePoint on-premise will have the full level of functionality that's currently available, but it will not be developed any further because all of their focus is now on Yammer around social. The other thing which people have sometimes got a bit of an issue with is the additional licensing costs. You do get a free version of Yammer, but if you need to be very tight around your governance and control and administration of Yammer, you really need the enterprise version. And sometimes the cost of that additional licensing can be prohibitive for people, so they'll decide to stick with just SharePoint Social. And really, they're the two main reasons that we come across why people wouldn't want to move to a blended SharePoint and Yammer environment. So if we are going to do this SharePoint and Yammer integration, there's a few steps we need to go through. The first one is to buy our licenses from Microsoft to give all our users an enterprise CAL for Yammer, and then configure our company network. So basically, get everybody set up on Yammer, ready to bring that into the SharePoint world. Like I said before, you can use the free version of Yammer. It's just that for larger organizations, or your organizations have to be very tight around control and governance and administration, you really need the enterprise license to be able to do that. We set up directory synchronization so that any profile information we're storing in our on-premise Active Directory can be passed up to Yammer, so people's information is automatically updated. You know, their department, their name, their manager, that sort of thing. Set up single sign-on. The single sign-on makes sure that, well, it's also, you know, it's a seamless experience for the end user in terms of not having to be putting a Yammer username and password. But it also means we can actually start to have control over who's logging in. So if somebody leaves the business, they can't still log into the Yammer environment. Our single sign-on has taken care of that. Yammer has its own authentication model. So the Active Directory system used on premise, which also links with Office 365, your username and password you use to log on in the morning is not connected with your Yammer username and password. So when somebody leaves the business, we need single sign-on to ensure that also automatically disables their Yammer login as well. We need to disable the SharePoint social features we don't want people to use, as I've already mentioned. And then we need to make sure our SharePoint environment, our SharePoint 2013 environment is running on SharePoint Service Pack 1. And then we can automatically, well, basically it's just a tick box. I just say I want to use Yammer now for social, and it's going to make some subtle changes in the system that will add a Yammer link to our toolbar and make sure people can get directly to that and not taken to their default SharePoint social. And then we need to go through the integration. So we need to start adding Yammer feeds to SharePoint and removing the default SharePoint social feeds from the sites where they might exist. And they're the steps you would want to take if you're going to go through the process of integrating the Yammer within the SharePoint environment. Probably more complicated if you're already using SharePoint Social and you decide to move to Yammer. So if you're not using any social capabilities at the moment, I would say you want to go for Yammer now and go through the steps. If you are already using social, you can still do this, but you're going to have to do a bit of unpicking of the SharePoint side of things. So there is no migration. You can't take your existing SharePoint 2013 news feeds and turn them into Yammer feeds, or take the content and drop it into a Yammer feed. You're going to have to start again with those feeds and perhaps sacrifice some of that information or manually copy it across. So here, just a quick slide here around Microsoft alignment, around some of the choices or decisions you're going to make when you're deciding about whether to go for this SharePoint social or Yammer integrated social within SharePoint. First one is Microsoft alignment. So Microsoft are, as I've already said, not going to invest any more time, money or effort in SharePoint social. They're not going to take it away in the short term, but they're not going to invest any further in it. And all Microsoft's backing now around social will be in Yammer, and the level of integration with SharePoint, between SharePoint and Yammer, is only going to increase, and that's where the focus will be, the integration with Yammer rather than the development of SharePoint Social. So if you want to be on board with all of that, then you're going to have to opt for Yammer and not SharePoint Social. Distributed architecture, this is an interesting one. So if you're a very large organization, a global organization, and you're going to have lots of SharePoint environments distributed around, which you want to pull together, that really doesn't work in respect to SharePoint Social. So you really want to look at something like the Yammer solution, which is a single point for your social in the cloud, and then push that functionality out across your SharePoint environments, which you've got dotted around. Compliance, we've already mentioned. You may not be able to put anything in the cloud. Straight away, that's going to rule out your Yammer social options because it's all in the cloud. You will never get a Yammer on-premise solution. Office 365 strategy. So if you're opting for Office 365, if you're fully aligned to that, and that's where your company's going, again, it's much more of a clearer decision around Yammer, I think. You've probably already got the licenses. The integration levels are much deeper anyway. It's a bit of a no-brainer. Plus, Yammer is also usable across your other Office 365 technologies. So there are many more reasons to go for it there. Outside communities, if you want to use social with people outside your organization to connect and do a lot of work with other partners, joint ventures, that sort of thing, you might well want to think about Yammer there over above instead of SharePoint Social, because it's already set up and ready to do that. And the final one there is licensing and costs, and I've already mentioned that. So if you do opt for Yammer and you do need to have the enterprise version to run it, as a true enterprise product with the governance control and administration you need, then there are going to be additional costs if you haven't already got it covered with your Office 365 licensing. Okay, so I'm just going to run through a bit of a demo now, just so you can see this. So if you've not seen the SharePoint social or Yammer social aspects before, this will be a good opportunity to see that. If you are familiar with them, then this will be a bit of a refresher, and hopefully I'll give you a chance to see some of the integration if you've not already seen that. I just need to switch to my desktop. 1 minute. And if somebody could just ping me and let me know that that's visible now, that would be great.
I can see that, Alex.
That's great. Okay. Thank you, Matthew. Right. So I'm going to start off here by showing you SharePoint Social. No Yammer, purely SharePoint here. There's not a lot on it in here because we're not using it anymore, but that's why it's a bit blank, my newsfeed. But this is the newsfeed I mentioned to you. So if I'm just going to stick with the SharePoint Social, some of the functionality just to show you here, I can go in here and I can post a message for anybody I want to, well, basically I can post a message and share that with anybody I want. There are a number of ways I can do that. So here I can see that I'm sharing this with everybody. So I'm posting this on my personal news feed here, but I'm sharing it with the whole of the business. That means they will see it if they come to my personal site. It's now shared with everybody. So I can just put a simple message in like that, or I can drop a hyperlink into a document. Now if I just actually go and pick up a document link, give me 1 moment. Nothing in this. You see it's a manual process in the SharePoint world, but I can link to that document there. So I just want to share this document with everybody. I can add a hashtag that I mentioned before, so it's about SharePoint 2013, and Patrick Fagan would be good to talk to about this. So what I've done there is I'm going to post a new, I'll just do it now actually, so I'll post that. So what I've done there is I've posted a message now that I want to share with everybody. I'm not getting away from using email. I provide some context. I put a link to the document, which is in my SharePoint team site. I've used a hashtag, and I've used a mention as well for Patrick. And what that means is anybody who's following this hashtag, anybody who's chosen to follow this hashtag, will automatically now get alerted via their newsfeed that I've mentioned that hashtag in a post. And they can have a look then and see what I've been talking about. Patrick Fagan will know that I've mentioned him in a post, so he'll know that people maybe want to contact him about this, or he may come back and comment on this post because he knows he's been mentioned in it. But people who read this post can also see that Patrick's there and click on his name and go to his personal site if they need to contact him about anything to follow up on this. And like I said, the document here is still hosted in my team site, but I've made it available to people. Okay, so that's a very simple post using SharePoint Social. What I could have done up here is I could have posted that same information but to a specific area in SharePoint. Now what that means is if I'd chosen to post that to the business productivity site, that wouldn't show up on my my news feed for everybody. It would actually show up on the site feed in business productivity, and I'll just come to that in a minute and show you how that looks. So as in all good demos, here's one I prepared earlier. So in our business productivity team site, this is a standard SharePoint 2013 site feed. I know it's got newsfeed up there, but it's a site feed. And this is where all the information that needs to be shared with the business productivity team can be posted here. And if I'm back in my newsfeed here, if I choose to post here, then I can automatically update that site from here. Or I can post directly on that site if I choose to. So it's just two different ways to get information onto that newsfeed to share with the community who share that site. Okay. Within my newsfeed here, like I say, we don't use SharePoint Social anymore, which is why this is so empty. But this newsfeed allows me to post information like I've just shown you, but also consume all the information that I've chosen to follow. So were we using the SharePoint social features heavily within the organization, you would see posts in here that weren't by me, that were by other people, but related to things that I'd chosen to follow. Either I'd chosen to follow that person, I'd chosen to follow a hashtag that they'd used, or they had posted in a site feed within a site that I'd chosen to follow. Okay, so hopefully that's that makes sense. But you can see the it's a very powerful tool in terms of getting information out to a broader audience, and being able to share information in a quick and easy way. I mean, I can reply to this. I'll just do a quick reply to this. You'll see it. But I mean, I can like that. Not sure how useful it is liking your own stuff, but at least somebody does. I can reply to that, so I can come in here and somebody can come in here and comment on the post that I've made, build up a threaded conversation. Or if I'm not already following that hashtag, if I see that in any post, I can choose to follow it. Okay, so that's the SharePoint 2013 social features, and you can see from here that I'm actually following 23 people. There's 5 documents that I'm following, 11 sites, and 8 hashtags. Had we had more activity around SharePoint Social, I'd also see the trending hashtags here. So I can see all the really important things people are talking about where they're using hashtags. So if it's not something I would normally be interested in, as in I'm not following that hashtag anyway, it's still getting flagged to me that there's a lot of activity happening around some certain areas, and maybe I should be thinking about these areas to go and follow up on. And if I click on one of the hashtags in there, it takes me to all the information that's been posted around that in a single place. So again, another great way to get information out to a broader audience who you might not normally be able to connect with. If I jump into here, this is a similar, well, it's the same newsfeed page. It's Office 365, but it looks, it looks and behaves the same as it does on premise. But I've switched out the newsfeed, the standard SharePoint newsfeed, with a Yammer feed, and this is one of the steps I mentioned that you probably want to go through in the earlier slides. So I've got rid of my standard SharePoint functionality, and I've bubbled through the Yammer feed. We're using some of that embed code. So, similar sort of functionality, but I'm now starting to rely on Yammer instead. If I click on the Yammer link at the top, you would get this on premise as well. So if you had SharePoint 2013 on premise, you get this link as well to start and show up. And this takes me to the Yammer environment if I want to actually go and look at the Yammer interface. In here, you'll see my groups. So these are the groups that I'm a member of, and I can create a new group if I want to. And for each of those groups, I can go and look at the specific feed which relates to them. By default, my landing page shows me what I'm following, so all the hashtags, people, and basically content that I want to be updated about comes through to my following feed. I can just look at everything, so this is all the stuff in order that's been created by Visual in Yammer, and I can also go to the ones which are most popular with people, the ones that I've viewed most often. So I've got ways to categorize the types of information that get pulled through into Yammer. I've got an inbox, so I can be told when somebody replies to the messages that I've created. I can be told when new information is posted that I want to know about in my inbox. I can also receive email alerts about that as well. So I can choose through my profile what I want to get emails about and what I don't. If I go into the if I go back into the SharePoint world, you'll see here is a team site I've set up just for this demo, and I've embedded a conversation feed in here from Yammer. Oops. I've taken the business productivity group feed from Yammer, and what I've done is I've dropped that on the home page here. So I'm now using Yammer Social within this site. One of the other nice things about using Office 365. So this function I'm going to show you now is specific to SharePoint Online or Office 365 out of the box, but you can code it in using something called Office Graph for SharePoint on-premise deployments, or it may come at a later date, for example, the next version of SharePoint on-premise as default functionality, I'm not sure. But I can come into a document that's in SharePoint and post it. So from here, I can choose to post that to Yammer. So I want to have a conversation around this. I don't want to upload it to Yammer. I want it to stay in SharePoint, but I want people to be able to see it, and I want to get people's feedback on it. So either I want to post it to all the company, probably not. I'll just post it to business productivity, and I'll just say to them, can you please tell me what you think of this? And post that. That's now automatically put that message into Yammer, into the business productivity group feed. So it's really nice, that level of integration. You can get that on premise, but you will need to add a bit of code into the system to get that to work like that. One of the things I also want to show you, which isn't working for some reason, I don't know if it's just our environment or across the board at the moment, but when you open a document in Office Web Apps from SharePoint, if you are using SharePoint Online or Office 365, you would normally get a conversation panel that pops out the side if you want it. That shows you all the conversations that are happening around this document within Yammer as well. Another bit of integration I want to show you was if I do a search in SharePoint. So just show me everything we've got on Office 365, please. I get my SharePoint search results back, which probably a lot of you have seen if you're using SharePoint 2013. But if I'm using, again, Office 365 / SharePoint Online, I get this link in here to search Yammer as well. Now, again, just like I said with the posting to Yammer when you're using SharePoint on premise, you can code this in. It's not there by default with an on-premise solution, but you can code this in. And if I now want to click on here, it will take my Office 365 query, automatically drop it into Yammer for me, and do that search. So it's not really an integrated solution. You're not bringing your Yammer results into the same results page as SharePoint results, but it does mean users don't have to go across to another environment, type in the search query again, and do that search separately. And really, that's the sort of integration that we're starting to see people and internally ourselves use. One of the last things I was going to show you is, for an example of an intranet. So this is our visual intranet. We've stopped using more traditional news functionality, like creating news pages, and are relying much more on Yammer. So you'll see we've dropped in Yammer feeds here, which don't have to take up the whole page. You know, they can be they can be branded and made to look and fit in with the environment. And we've got a number of Yammer feeds now instead used on our internet, rather than going through the process of creating more structured news. It may be right for you, it may not be, it may supplement more structured news. Really, that's a design decision you have to make, but you can see that you can drop Yammer in and it can be integrated in a nice way within the environment. And on that, I shall hand back over to David and let him just finish up and see if there's any questions around this.
Thank you very much for that, Alex. Hopefully everybody's got something from today's presentation. Let me just see if I can get the slides back up for us. Okay, so hopefully everybody can see the slides again now. As I say, hopefully everybody's got something from the information that Alex has run through today, and hopefully it's given you lots and lots of things to think about. If you're, regardless of which stage you're at, whether you're first considering whether to go for SharePoint and to integrate Yammer, or you've already got it in place, Visual really can help at any step of the way. If you'd like to know more information, please feel free to drop us an email through to inquiries@risual.com, or if anybody wants to contact me directly, it's david.a@risual.com. If you've already got SharePoint installed at the moment, or any other Microsoft technologies, and would perhaps like a little bit of support and assistance in helping to monitor and optimize your use of these technologies, we've got a couple of distinct offerings that we can help with. The first of which is our kind of full managed service, in which case we can be any part of your IT team that you want, from first, second, third, fourth line support, covering all of your Microsoft technologies, and we're also more than happy to front end in any support calls from any other alternative technologies that you're using. For the likes of SharePoint, as that's what today's call is about, we can also offer a fully managed SharePoint service. where we can assist with everything from doing your SharePoint administration, helping out with content, and also supporting the servers. If you've gone down the Office 365 route, Office 365 is an evergreen product, and one of the things that we always say to our customers, and one of the things we're always talking about, is really making sure that you get the most out of your investment, and really making sure that with Office 365 changing on a kind of monthly basis, there could be up to 200 changes per month. It's keeping on track of them and seeing how it may affect either you as an IT team or your end users. To this end, we can offer an Office 365 maximizer, so we can come in on a monthly or quarterly basis and let you know what the changes are, how it may affect you, and kind of what the benefits of the changes would be to the organization. With Office 365 as well being hosted within the cloud, we've got service management that we can do for you, so we can help with kind of user access, any errors that might come up, and again can front-end calls directly into Microsoft. If you've got kind of standard on-premise versions of SharePoint or any other Microsoft technologies, really we've got our premium and standard support, so we can offer under premium 24 hours a day, 7 days a week support on your servers on a kind of reactive basis. We will also do proactive monitoring for you, so this will cover things like a daily health check, making sure that all the systems are running as they should be. We can do proactive application monitoring for you as well, to make, again, really just to make sure that when you start your business day, all your systems are running as they should. And again, if you just want an escalation point, Visual are more than happy to be on hand through our kind of standard support offering for you guys to give us a call should there be any problems. Now, again, Visual are more than happy to help you either identify which Microsoft solution is going to be right for you, help you with the design and planning stage, right the way through to build, test and deploy, and then continued ongoing support and maintenance. I really hope that everybody's found today's session useful. If I'll ask Christine now just to take everybody off mute, and we'd love to get some questions from you if anybody's got anything that they'd like to ask. Okay, I'll take by the silence that nobody's got any questions at the moment. If anybody does think of anything after the fact, or once you've watched this webcast back over the recording link that we'll send out to everybody, again, please feel free to drop an email through to inquiries@risual.com, or email myself directly, which is David A. Of these events that we'll be putting on. Thanks very much.
Are you still online?
I am.
Yep.
This is Rick Shortman over at Wrexham. I know we've got a brief engagement with Visual just in the consulting space at the moment.
Yep.
Conscious of time at the moment, but I'd like a follow-up if possible on what Visual can offer in terms of engagement and onboarding consultancy. We're about to venture into Yammer, and we've just deployed Office 365 from a mail perspective. And we're currently working with content and code, but Visual has come up in a number of conversations as being more premier in the Yammer and SharePoint space. So I'd like to try and get some follow up on what services you could offer to help us with adoption and onboarding.
That's fine. So do you just want to? In fact, do you want to ping me an email and we can arrange a follow up call?
I will do. Yes. Is that to Dave or Alex?
Either you can. I'll put mine in the. Well, it's just alexe@visual.com or david.a@visual.com.
Okay.
And we can arrange a follow up call with you around that.
Yeah, okay. Rick, if you send it to both, we can pick it up and get a call scheduled for you.
Okay, I'll pick those up and send them in then. Thanks very much.
Cheers.
It's very interesting.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks. Bye-bye.